Williams Air Force Base was the largest pilot training base in the country, perhaps in the free world. So we had people coming from all over the world to train here, and it was in that role for almost 50 years. I'd have to go back and do the math, but Willie was the largest pilot training base in the country, and my role was to train pilots to become pilots in the U.S. Air Force.
I was here from primarily from about April of 1987 through about April of 1988 when I graduated, earned my Air Force pilot wings. I came through here every now and then, a couple times after that, but we were here for just about a year going through intensive flying training. So that was my introduction to Arizona. I had not been here previous to that. Very exciting place to be at the time. Very different. It was a typical Air Force base, you know, shades of brown and everything, which was the typical color back in the days through the mid-90s, I think, and even on to today, I guess. But it was a very busy base, you know, the Air Force base. They're employed probably 2,000 or 3,000 civilians, not to mention all the military here. Definitely a military atmosphere. It's where we not only learned to fly, but to become officers as well. But there was a lot of time for relaxation. You know, there were pools around, volleyball courts. It was not overall an intimidating place. You didn't have to stand at attention, you know, or march in formation or anything. It was very relaxing when you weren't learning how to fly.
I was the wing commander here at Williams Air Force Base from '85 to '87. And then the base came on the base closure list in '91, and it actually closed in '93, but I retired in '91 and became involved with the reuse planning for Williams Air Force Base. And I was the first employee hired by ASU East with the responsibility for getting the campus property from the federal government, and then my role was to develop it into a campus.
It looked very much like the Air Force wanted us to come here, and so they offered to our planning committee, would you like to do a master plan for your campus? And if so, here's $400,000 for the base readjustment fund. So we started a master planning for our campus before they made the decision to give it to us. So we were just moving along. I was very concerned about the image of this new campus. People will look at it as an appendage of ASU, or maybe call it ASU Light, or some academic degrading comments like that. That those of us from the Tempe campus were coming out here and getting this thing going. So my wife and I made a decision that we should physically show a commitment to the campus. So Judy and I sold our house in Gilbert and moved onto the campus in '93. Very early in the stage, and I got assurances from the president and Forsyth that looked like I'm going to be involved with this thing, so it's okay to move to the campus. So we moved out here.
Laddie Corps had wanted to create one university in many places. And he realized to service a larger Phoenix metropolitan area, we would have to have multiple campus locations. And he didn't want to segregate them and make them satellite campuses. He wanted them to be all part of Arizona State University. And so effectively what they did is they created the East Campus first. We were known as ASU East for several years prior to the Polytechnic campus. And the opportunity to come out here allowed us to grow in terms of floor space and office spaces and things like that, laboratories. And so effectively we came in here in the fall of 1996 and opened this campus. But prior to that, we started planning in the fall of 1995. And at that time I was the new department chairman for a department called Information Management Technology. And effectively what we did was plan the move, which occurred in the summertime at 108-degree temperatures. And we moved to this campus. It took about 6 or 7 days to get everything out here. In the heat of the summer, we worked 12, 13-hour days. But it was rewarding in the sense that we could all see what the potential was out here.
When they started the campus out here, Provost Backus approached me to see if I'd be interested in coming out here. So I came out, met with him, talked with him about it, talked with President Kaur about it, and the decision was that I would try it for a year, half and half. As President Kaur said some months into it, he said that I actually had 2 full-time jobs, which was true. And by December, January, Provost Backus was saying, we need you out here full-time. You need to make a decision. So I loved it out here. It was such a fun atmosphere and great opportunity to start a new campus from the ground up, convert an old Air Force base into a campus. So that's how I ended up out here.
The biggest challenge, frankly, was the place and the facilities, and trying to transform a 1950s, 60s era Air Force base into, a university campus of the 1990s. So I think that was the biggest challenge.
When I came out here, actually having come from West, which was even when it was new, it was a very elegant campus, it still is. We came out here then to see what the potential was, and I came out here a couple times and looked around, and God, we were here for a couple of hours, and I said, oh, this is junk. Basically, you look at all these buildings, and this was the tech center was like an empty grocery store, and the building next to it was also like an empty grocery store. The union wasn't here, of course, and so we found, and the old office building was not too bad, but we found maybe 4 or 5 buildings that might be usable. And when the Air Force pulled out, they just pulled out. They didn't drain water, they didn't anything. So a lot of infrastructure really was shot when we came and had to have some attention. So this was really a blank canvas.
So for example, there was no print and imaging lab, there was no photo studio, there was really nothing. And one of the first jobs, in a sense, I had was to try to figure out how to get equipment. Slowly over the years, the biggest challenge was building up the facility. And I actually was part of the group that taught for the first time in the Technology Center.
We were concerned immediately about how not only we would renovate some of the space for immediate use, but how we would build sufficient capital to build it out over time. Fortunately, the space that was available included a new building that had been commissioned by the military that hadn't even opened yet, that gave us a central location for administrative offices, library, a campus center in and of itself. We had no concern about its attractiveness to the students. In fact, by moving the agribusiness program to East and the engineering technology program to East, they began recruiting students from a much wider array around the nation than they had when they were in another college on the Tempe campus. And there were some buildings that would lend themselves to being dormitories. So we had a starter set.
When I first arrived, there was still a guard at the front gate. And so I pulled up and I was a little bit nervous, and I just told him, I'm with ASU. And he goes, oh, great, come on in, right? Like it was no big deal. And it wasn't the vibrant place it is now. There weren't any of the restaurants or shops surrounding. It was actually still a dirt road out front with like a 4-way stop. Before, there was just a leftover cafeteria from the Air Force that was still here. But I have to tell you, that also made us even stick together more because we were all using those facilities. So we would always see one another. You got to know everyone on campus. You could call them by name. So as much as it was maybe a little bit challenging, it's always fun to see us continue to grow but stay close together.
Chuck Backus, who was the provost at the time, spoke at the first breakfast that I came to here on the Poly campus. And Chuck spent a good deal of time talking about service. And when he talked about service, he was talking about service to the community as well as service to the campus. I think one of the points that he made was that the campus isn't going to go anywhere unless the local community goes somewhere as well, and that it was kind of our responsibility as faculty members to provide service to the building of both the campus environment as well as the community environment. So that all of a sudden kind of gave me kind of a mission, if you will, or a special identity related to the campus.
We weren't quite ready to open when we opened, but we had to. And so, like, you know, a load of furniture would come and students would be sitting on it before we'd even put it on the floor. You know, it was just, and so it was, and I think a lot of students and parents particularly were sort of surprised, and they said, this is ASU, you know? And I thought, you know, it was gonna be the other place. We said, no, this is it, but you know, if you wanna learn to fly, there's an airport here, and we've got a flight program, and so on and so forth. And I sort of view the students who came out here as just heroic, because they made a life for themselves out here.
I'm Dwayne Rowe. I'm the Dean of the College of Integrative Sciences and Arts, and then I'm also the Vice Provost of the Polytechnic campus. And I dearly love the role because I get to brag about this campus all the time. I just came from an orientation session where I did that, and I spent a lot of time out in the community with about 25 groups, chambers of commerce, cities, business groups, community groups, education groups, representing the campus to the East Valley, and I just love that so much.
It was pretty bare bones in those early years, but the spirit was good. The people who came out here really enjoyed coming to this campus, and they enjoyed seeing the evolution of the campus day by day. So there were a lot of positive things that happened during the time I was here, and I got to tell you, Chuck Backus was largely responsible for a lot of that stuff happening. He's the guy that kept everything together.
It doesn't look like an Air Force base any longer. What it means to us, though, is that we have a campus and a facility that's almost as large as the Tempe campus in terms of acreage out here. So we have room to grow.
We've got a lot more resources out here now, a lot more, and it's a beautiful place in many ways, but we still have each other. And you know, for example, Friday afternoons at 3 o'clock in the summer, we still have the all-campus ice cream socials, and that is really special. And it's a good mix of faculty and staff and occasional students who come to the ice cream social. So I hope that that sense of community and love for one another persists for as long as possible.
Oh, we'll keep growing. There's no doubt we're going to keep growing, right? Just with everything going on in the airport, and our surrounding community is so invested in making this a bigger and better place, right? So we've got a lot of growth potential, and you know we'll keep innovating. We're really great at that too. It's going to be fun to watch as we go into the future too, how we continue to grow, but keep that special place of memories here too. This place has been built by just so many amazing people, and that's the difference, right? Is watching this continue to grow and be built by people who care about the Poly campus.